ਢੰਗ ਨਾਲ ਮਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਸਥਿਤੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਂਭਿਆ, ਉਹ ਵਧਾਈ ਦੇ ਹੱਕਦਾਰ ਨੇ। ਲੋਕ ਖੁਸ਼ ਨੇ। ਕਿਸੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਗਲੀ ਦਾ ਪਿੰਡ ਦਾ ਕਿਤੇ
Good evening, this is Brass Tax. I'm Zaka Jacob. It's been over a couple of weeks since the budget session's second leg began, and every single day so far has been a washout. Only one bill has been passed, with close to 3 dozen pending. More than 80 crore rupees of taxpayer money has been wasted, and it comes down to whether or not Rahul Gandhi will apologize for his comments made while he was in London. Mr. Gandhi and the Congress party say they have nothing to apologize for. The question is it time for once and for all to end this charade and get Parliament to get back to what it was meant for, and that is to discuss people's issues and to pass legislation?
The second leg of the budget session of Parliament continues to be a write-off. It was the 6th straight day of disruptions as members of Parliament from the ruling dispensation and the opposition continue to protest. The opposition has been unwavering on their demand for a joint parliamentary committee probe into the Adani Hindenburg report. Several opposition MPs protested in the corridors of Parliament and even hung a banner that read "We want JPC" from the first floor of the Parliament building.
You can see the banner of "We want JPC" right here in the Parliament House, and these are members of the opposition parties who are carrying out a protest. The place that they are standing is right outside the State Bank of India branch. There is a State Bank of India branch which is situated on the first floor of the Parliament building. This is between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha chambers, from where the Speaker Gallery can be entered, from where the Press Gallery can be entered, and it is right outside that bank, that branch of State Bank of India, that this protest is being carried out by the opposition leaders.
To try and break the impasse, the chairman of Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha speaker held all-party meetings. But most opposition parties skipped both the meetings, leaving no scope for a breakthrough.
I feel what is more important is the issue, which is the Adani scam, in which Prime Minister Modi is silent, and we believe that he is instrumental in what has happened.
He said, how do we run? We said, as far as we, the opposition, are concerned, we the few parties who are taking up this, we are very firm on JPC. Unless JPC is accepted, not only discussed, but accepted, considered, we will be pressing for it.
The BJP, meanwhile, continued to demand an apology from Rahul Gandhi over his remarks in London against the Modi government. But Congress has refused to blink.
चोर चोर मुसेरे भाई हो गए आजकल, भ्रष्टाचार करने वाले एक साथ हो गए आजकल, संसद भी नहीं चलने देते हैं और अपने गुनाहों को छिपाने के लिए, सत्य को छिपाने के लिए प्रधानमंत्री पर भी अनाप शनाप बयान कर दिया।
राहुल गांधी जी इस सदन के सदस्य नहीं हैं और उनके माफी मांगने का सवाल ही नहीं उठता।
The BJP accused opposition MPs of deliberately stalling parliamentary process.
विपक्ष ने फिर एक बार अपमान किया है। मुझे लगता है जब कोई व्यक्ति या कोई दल के पास कोई शब्द ना हो, कोई लेग स्टैंड करने के लिए अपने विषय के ऊपर कोई ठोस बात ना हो, एक वीक विकेट पे कोई खड़ा हो, तभी इस प्रकार के हल्के कारनामे सुर्खियों में बने रहने के लिए विपक्ष आज कर रहा है।
The budget session of Parliament is set to conclude on the 6th of April. So why are netas allowing taxpayers' money to go down the drain with these daily disruptions?
सदन की कार्रवाई 2 बजे तक के लिए स्थगित की जाती है।
So what exactly is the price of this Parliament deadlock? Let's break it down in terms of numbers. So far, there have been 17 sittings in the second leg of the budget session of Parliament, and the money that's been lost because of these repeated disruptions in both houses is over 80 crore rupees. That's just in the last 2 weeks. Parliament should have worked for 90 hours. Instead, more than half of it, 54 hours, have been lost just in the din. Only 3 bills have been introduced in this session so far, and that includes the budget for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. That is a lone bill that has been passed in this entire session. But at this point of time, there are close to 36 bills that are still pending to be introduced in the House. So, what exactly is going on? Because it seems like neither the ruling party MPs nor the opposition want Parliament to function, thereby making a fool of the people of this country, the taxpayers who fund this charade. Is it time to end the charade once and for all? Aparajita Sarangi is BJP Member of Parliament, who will be joined by Dr. Shantanu Sen of the Trinamool Congress. Mahima Singh, advocate, is a spokesperson of the Congress Party. Amar Patnaik, MP of the BJD, and Ratan Sharda, RSS researcher and author, is also on the broadcast. Let me start with Aparajita Sarangi. It is said that the onus of running the House, in fact both houses, is on the government, is on the ruling party, it's on the Treasury benches. For the last 2 weeks, Aparajita Sarangi, the BJP, and you're a Member of Parliament of the lower house, you have been asking for Mr. Rahul Gandhi to apologize for whatever he said in London. Without going into the merits of what he said or did not say, is that an issue that should be holding up Parliament, wasting taxpayer money for 2 weeks now, ma'am?
A very good evening. At the outset, let me tell you that it's the combined responsibility of the ruling dispensation and the opposition to run the Parliament. And very unfortunate that we have not been able to do so. And I would definitely like to mention here that today in the Lok Sabha, the demand for grants for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir could be passed amid all noise and din. Now, we are all aware of the fact that today, Honorable Speaker had convened the meeting of all the political parties, and he in fact held discussions with all of them and requested them to calm down. And of course, the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha also did the same. He had convened a meeting. Now, as far as the situation in the Parliament is concerned, I very emphatically would like to say here that there is a very nervous opposition which is feeling overwhelmed by a very strong ruling dispensation. This is the scenario. And as far as Bharatiya Janata Party and the government of Prime Minister Modi is concerned, we are extremely clear about what we are saying and doing. We are against whatever Rahul Gandhi did and said in London and in Cambridge University. Whatever his statements, these statements were against the nation, and he has brought down the status of the country, has demeaned the status of the country, and he has humiliated all of us. So for that matter, we are insistent on his apology. Now, let me make it very clear. In fact, you would be kind of telling me after I speak that he wanted to speak and you did not allow him to speak. Now here, very candidly, I would like to submit that he wanted to offer an explanation, but we want him to offer an apology. We have heard him on the foreign soil as to what he said. And I think we need not kind of, get any kind of explanation for him. He has requested, or rather he mentioned Europe and America, and he said, why are they silent in the matter? In fact, the democracy back home is in danger, and Europe and America should not be silent in the matter. How do you interpret this?
Let me ask Mahima Singh of the Congress Party.
Unpardonable, and we demand an apology.
The point is that what the BJP is saying is that Mr. Rahul Gandhi, by saying what he said in Cambridge University and other platforms in London, was not only insulting the government of the day, that is the smaller issue here. The bigger issue is he was insulting the nation, he was also insulting Parliament, he's a Member of Parliament, and therefore, if any business needs to be conducted, the apology should be the first thing that's forthcoming, and then we can move on to the rest of the business. This is the contention by the BJP. If all it takes is an apology from Mr. Gandhi to get Parliament to function, to stop this colossal waste of taxpayer money, why doesn't he just come out and say sorry?
Audacious, that is, Zaka, audacious demand at the very outset. Good evening, all. And let me begin with, very relevant lines of Fana Nizami Kanpuri. He says, "Is mauj ki takkar se sahil bhi larajta hai. Is mauj ki takkar se sahil bhi larajta hai. Kuch roz to tufan ki aagosh mein pal jaye." That is the strategy of the BJP, because the tide that Rahul Gandhi is unmanageable, uncontrollable for the BJP, and that's become very evident across the world. The storm that has been orchestrated by the BJP in this country, in the parliament of this country over the past over a month now, and more so arduously over the last about 10 days, is because they can control the local agencies and authorities apparently. But the market and the global market and global media is totally out of the BJP's control. And let me just say, right now, what the BJP spokesperson has said is utterly disconcerting for not only the BJP, but for the country as a whole. What she was saying is that, you see, he wants to come and offer an explanation, which cannot be allowed unless he offers an apology. Rule number 57, ma'am. You cannot be running the parliament on the whims and fancies of the BJP. You see, this is driven by late Arun Jaitley's, he reflected upon the BJP's culture in 2010 when he said, obstructionism is a part of legitimate parliamentary tactics. And
but Advocate Mahima Singh, can I ask you something? You in a sense, maybe you didn't realize it, but in a sense you gave away in that answer, ma'am, 10 seconds. You gave away in that answer that Modi government may be able to control a lot of things domestically, but they can't control it internationally. By de facto, you are saying that, we need the international press, the Western press, the New York Times and Washington Post and other, global markets to actually undermine him, because we can't seem to be able to do that electorally here in India.
Let me
willy-nilly, that's what you are saying.
I'll come to your question, but let me complete my thought first. In 2010, a whole winter session was washed out, Zaka, because the BJP was demanding resignation of a minister and constitution of a JPC. And the same BJP, sitting as the ruling party today, can be so non-committal, can be so brazen in its conduct that it can absolutely forego democracy for its and fancies. And what you have just asked me, let me say that we are living in a world when FDI drives the economy, for a major part of it. And so you cannot look away from the global picture at your own discretion, that for this we'll look at the global picture, but for that we'll not. When it comes to media, when it comes to the market is reflecting Mr. Adani's actions very categorically, very clearly. And all we are asking is, what are you trying to hide? What is your relationship with Mr. Adani?
So let me go across to two other MPs who are joining us from other opposition parties as well. Amar Patnaik of the BJD is there with us, and Dr. Shantanu Sen is also joining us. Mr. Amar Patnaik, fact of the matter is that you have taken a slightly different position from the rest of the opposition. While you may or may not want a JPC into the Adani affair, the fact of the matter is, I'm sure that you don't think disrupting the House is the way to go, even if that was a demand and that demand was a legitimate one. Like I said, if 17 days of the second leg of the parliament session have been wiped out, only one bill has been passed, and that too today, and there are 3 dozen that are pending, what is it that opposition parties like yourself can offer to the combined opposition? We've seen 17, 18 parties who are adamant about JPC. They are the ones who are coming out to the well of the houses and sloganeering. They are as much party to the House getting disrupted as the ruling party side is. What is it that you are laying in front of Parliament and your appeal to these opposition parties as to how we can find a via media or a way forward? Because, we can't afford for the remainder of this session to be washed out, because that would be a crime on the people of this country.
Well, I think first thing, let me make one thing very clear, that we are not a part of the opposition. We are not a part of the opposition. We are not a part of the government. We are there as representing a regional party to ensure that the state's interests, the interests of the people of Orissa, are completely protected, are completely raised with the central government so that they get their rightful dues. Now, when you are there in this kind of a position where the House doesn't function, as I have said earlier, yes, you are right. Just as the rest of the country, my constituents in Orissa in fact, it is within their right, and it is within fully understandable if they ask me the question that what did you achieve in these 7 or 8 days, or if the whole session gets washed out, what did you achieve for us? What did you achieve for the state? So I think the disruption that is taking place in the parliament, I've said this before, and that's the view of our party as well, that anything that is being discussed now, even in this news, what we're discussing now in the newsroom or outside the parliament, could probably be discussed within the parliament as well, both the sides. And the House could have been made to function.
No, but whose responsibility is that, Mr. Patnaik?
Just one point.
Yeah.
I had raised issues relating to Orissa. Now, I am unable to do that, even though they get listed in the 0 hour. It's not just a question of passing bills. Passing bills is just government business. What happens to the question answers? These are private members' bills. What happens to the 0 hours? Special mentions. These are private members' bills, rights. Now that gets completely, mauled because of this disruption.
No, but whose responsibility is it to ensure that a discussion on this pressing matter is taken up? The opposition is saying that Rule 267 is always pressed, but it is never considered by the chair of the House. In any democracy, the job of running the House, at least the primary responsibility of running the House, is that of the government. In this case, we are having scenes of the government members of Parliament themselves, rightfully or wrongfully. Like I said, I don't want to go into the merits or demerits of what Mr. Gandhi said, asking for an apology for what they believe is an insult to the country on foreign land.
Is this for me?
Yeah, that's for you, Mr. Patnaik. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the point. Whatever we are discussing outside the parliament, whatever allegations on both the sides, counter allegations on both sides, demand on both sides, could probably have been discussed within the parliament itself by moving motions, independent motions, and the House would have discussed this, taken a call on this, either this way or that way, in which case the business of the House would have run. Parties like us, who are local regional parties, would have got a chance to speak about our state's demands, our people's requirements, people's demands, and we would have expected the government to answer. Now, where does one raise these issues anymore if the parliament doesn't function?
Okay, so let me ask Dr. Shantanu Sen of the TMC. Again, while you may share many of the demands of the opposition, whether it's the constitution of the JPC, you have not, for example, said anything about what Mr. Rahul Gandhi said, whether you agree or disagree with what he said on foreign soil. B, you've also not been part of these joint opposition sort of rallies and marches to the ED office, CBI office, etc. Why is that, Dr. Shantanu Sen? Why is the TMC more like a lone wolf here rather than part of the pack? Because you seem to be sort of trying to carve a path of your own. Why is that? Even though your demands are very similar to what the rest of the opposition wants.
See, first of all, the anti-BJP attitude of Trinamool Congress need not to be proved any further. Secondly, every party has got its own modus operandi. Our party believes that there are 7-8 burning issues of the country which people of the country at large are facing. We believe that since independence, perhaps it is for the first time that inside the parliament, it is the treasury bench which is disrupting the parliament like anything, and they are not allowing the discussion to take place. This is the most unfortunate part of the story. Secondly, I must let you know, we demanded Supreme Court monitored time-bound investigation because we have got several experiences so far the JPC is concerned. If JPC takes place, it will be a member of 31. It will be a committee of 31 members, where the ruling party BJP will be having their majority, along with the chairman from their side. So we have every doubt JPC cannot give any proper conclusion or any proper judgment.
But Dr. Sen, you are asking for a court-monitored, time-bound probe. The court has already ordered that. The Supreme Court has already ordered that.
We demand day-to-day reporting and day-to-day investigation and time-bound investigation. We don't have any faith on JPC because the reasons as I have cited before.
Okay.
And thirdly, we believe that this SBI and LIC issue, this Modi Adani scam, this unemployment issue, need of women empowerment and women reservation bill, this price hike, the LPG price hike, the price hike of essential commodities, these are of much more importance because all these issues touch the basic need of the common people.
Okay.
So that's why we want discussion. We are strongly against this disruption being caused by the Treasury bench.
So let me ask
and
Ratan
we want the
Sharda,
Parliament to fund
RSS
something.
researcher and author, about this. Again, it comes back to what the opposition is continuously saying, that why are the Treasury benches disrupting the House? They may or may not have a legitimate concern with what Mr. Rahul Gandhi said on foreign soil. But, for example, what Mallikarjun Kharge today said in the Rajya Sabha, that Mr. Gandhi is not a member of the Rajya Sabha. Why is the business of the Rajya Sabha being held up?
Well, Zaka, I must say that I'm very saddened by the developments that are happening. Actually, no development happening in the parliaments. Rahul does not know that what he has done to defame Indian democracy, Indian institutions, and the media itself, as you rightly pointed out, Indian media. And he's not going to apologize because he wants a ruckus. Now, having done this, not understood what he said all over the world, now BJP will definitely take advantage of that. It has taken advantage of that because anyway, House was not going to work in the name of Adani. And what is the case about Adani? Will JPC be made on the basis of a short seller stock player? Should it be made on the basis of some people losing some money in the stock market, which is a gamble anyway? The company hasn't gone corrupt. People have not lost their investment, and it is doing wonderful business. It is anybody's case that Adani is taking over ports overseas is against Indian interest? If other people would have applauded, these people are crying about it. And coming to more serious issue, what is the JPC result anyway? As he rightly pointed out, JPC has generally not resulted in anything. Last 25 years, 4 JPCs before were rejected by opposition. Harshad Mehta got delayed, and finally, after 5 years, special court was set up. Ketan Parekh report was finally diluted. There was a pesticide report in soft drinks. So what are we talking about?
No, but
Court is already having a JPC.
By not allowing the House to function.
Just last second.
Okay.
Just last 5 seconds. They are saying day-to-day hearing. Can government or anybody force the Supreme Court or the agencies who are working under Supreme Court to force their investigation speed? So this is all, very big farce on the people of India.
Okay.
And I think
so. Let me go back to Aparajita Sarangi, because I think one of the things that the opposition is saying is, whether you agree or disagree with what Mr. Gandhi said, he essentially said that democratic institutions in the country are being captured by the BJP, whether it is, the judiciary, the press, election commission, so on and so forth. By not allowing parliament to function, by not allowing opposition leaders to speak in the House, aren't you making what Rahul Gandhi said into a self-fulfilling prophecy? You are actually, actualizing what he said by not allowing the House to run, or at least not making an attempt to try and reach some kind of a common ground and to try and make efforts to make the House run. Rahul Gandhi can now turn around and say, this is exactly what I was saying in London. The BJP is not allowing opposition members' voices to be heard in Parliament.
I started my submission today by saying that Honorable Speaker and Honorable Chairman Rajya Sabha, both of them actually started discussions today. And amid the noise and din, the demand for grants for Jammu and Kashmir was passed. And in fact, all the while, Honorable Speaker in the Lok Sabha had been trying to kind of calm everybody down. And to say that the ruling dispensation is not making any efforts is far from the truth. But at the same time, there are certain issues which cannot be compromised with. It's a question of the nation's dignity, and we just cannot let it go. Rahul Gandhi cannot offer explanation on the floor of the House. He has to offer apology, an apology not to the 500 odd MPs in the Lok Sabha and 250 in the Rajya Sabha. No, not at all. He has to offer apology to the nation, to the 140 crore Indians. Whatever he has done is not right, and he must accept. Unfortunately, we heard his press conference, and we have been hearing all the leaders of the Congress. There is not an iota of guilt.
Okay.
Whatever is wrong, and whatever is right. And I think whatever the behavior of Congress, especially Rahul Gandhi, is unacceptable.
So Advocate Mahima saying, I'll give you the final word. He may not have asked for intervention by, let's say, the US or Europe or other countries, but the fact is, if you look at the language that Mr. Gandhi used, it's almost like Europe, America, why aren't you saying anything about what's happening in India? It's almost like beseeching them to say something about what's going on in India.
Well, Zaka, we are living in a global village, first of all, let me just say that. And when I hear the BJP spokesperson, the spreaders of fake news today, the machinery that's responsible for spreading the fake news today, I want to ask them a simple question. Why should Mr. Narendra Modi not apologize for insulting my forefathers, your forefathers, the country's citizens' forefathers by saying...
We never invited Europe and America.
Not interject, and where are we headed as a democracy, Zaka, I want to ask. Because you see, before 2014, we were under a debt of about 55 lakh crores. Today, it is 155 lakh crores. And if you talk about the human rights ecosystem in this country, we are invoking rule number 357, and the BJP MP, honorable MP sitting here on the debate as a spokesperson of the BJP is saying that, you see, we want an apology. So you want to deprive him of his right as a representative of the people. That speaks for itself, madam, and that speaks for where you are taking the democracy today. You want it to be a presidential democracy where the Prime Minister doesn't come to the houses for the
one second. To change our system of governance from parliamentary to presidential, you have to have 2/3 majority in both houses. That as of right now does not exist. I don't think that is. I mean, that is just an alarmist sort of situation or a picture that you're painting. But be that as it may, like I said, I think the ultimate loser, and this is really what all of us need to ponder on. The joke is really being played on the people of this country, because the people of this country are funding Parliament. Like I said, over 80 crores have been spent in the last 17 sessions, which is the budget session of the Parliament. And the real sort of joke is being played on the people of this country. Yeah, Ratan Sharda.
I am saying it's just question of just money. It is also question of laws that are not passed, the government bills that are not presented.
Correct.
It's a huge loss of the people of India.
Yeah.
It's not just a question of money, because money is one thing. Other is the irresponsible parliament members, and people see this. They will be, and I am telling you, Congress will have bigger loss of face than BJP anyway, because BJP is today enjoying a goodwill that Congress doesn't have. They should realize it.
Okay, Amar Patnaik, final words, sir. I've got to wrap up in 30 seconds.
I entirely agree. I think we have to be extremely mindful of the fact that the people of this country, the citizens of this country, have been expecting for a long, long time a better behavior, a better response, a better, democratic conduct in the parliament from their representatives. And we must all think about this. This is the time, I think we have to rise above party lines and think about this as to whether we are serving the constituents well, whether we deserve
we really
to be,
hope that the
where
presiding
we are,
officers in both houses are able to sort of sit down with both sides, both the ruling party side as well as, of course, the opposition side, and bring them to some kind of a consensus, so that at least the last few days that are remaining, another week, 10 days to go before the session concludes, at least in that fag end of this session, hopefully some business will get transacted. We'll leave it at that. We'll see how this plays out. Thanks very much to all our guests. Meanwhile, the other big sort of diplomatic move that's happening is happening right now in Moscow as well as in Kiev, almost near simultaneously. In Moscow, Chinese President Xi Jinping sat down for a second day of talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Xi has invited his dear friend Putin to travel to China at a time of his choice later this year. But the world's eyes, this meeting will have an impact on the war in Ukraine. In recent weeks, China has attempted to portray itself as a peacemaker, calling for a ceasefire and releasing a 12-point peace plan. Putin has told Xi that he viewed China's proposals with respect, but the talks have focused on strengthening coordination and cooperation with Russia, which is why Ukraine and the West remain skeptical of any breakthrough, with many believing that Xi Jinping's visit provides diplomatic cover for Moscow. So what exactly is at stake both for Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin? Ever since Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the backlash from the West, Putin has been working hard to retain ties with the non-Western world. So in that sense, Xi Jinping's visit offers a huge respite to the Russian leadership, because Putin can say that Russia is not isolated. On the other hand, Xi Jinping can project China as a defiant global superpower and a reliable partner. And coming on the heels of the landmark Saudi Arabia-Iran deal, Xi Jinping will be pitching himself as a potential peacemaker in Ukraine. While Xi Jinping met his Russian counterpart in Moscow, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida made a surprise visit to Kiev to meet Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. This is the first time that a Japanese Prime Minister has visited a country or a region with ongoing fighting since World War II. It's also the first visit to Ukraine by an Asian member of the G7 grouping. Kishida's visit is to deliver a message of solidarity and support for Ukraine, but it caught Beijing by surprise as the Japanese Prime Minister entered Poland from India using a secretly chartered plane instead of the standard government aircraft. China hit out, saying that Tokyo should do more to de-escalate the situation. The simultaneous visits by Kishida and Xi Jinping underscore deep divisions between Asian neighbors. This is particularly true when it comes to the war in Ukraine. Japan is pledging its full-fledged support for Kiev, while China remains a lone voice supporting an increasingly isolated Russia. In the face of China's growing assertiveness, Japan and the United States have moved closer in recent years, particularly on regional security and intelligence cooperation. Japan is also a member of the Quad, the informal grouping which also has India, Australia, and the United States. China sees the Quad as a grouping meant to purely contain its rise. Meanwhile, we're getting some piece of breaking news, and this is an important one. Vladimir Putin, while speaking alongside his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, saying that the West is not yet ready for the Chinese peace plan on Ukraine to become the basis for the settlement of this conflict. That's what he has said just moments ago while he was sharing stage with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping at the Kremlin in Moscow. Let me go across to our guests who are joining us. Professor Victor Gao is Chair Professor, Soochow University. Calvin Dark is a Democratic strategist from Washington, D.C. Alexander Bratersky is senior analyst, and Alexei Goncharenko is a Ukrainian member of parliament. Let's try and see who we can... All right, let's start with Kevin Dark. Kevin, it comes down to a simple proposition. China is saying this war is going on for over a year. The United States and its European partners don't seem to be in a position to be able to end it. In fact, they believe, on the contrary, the US is only further fueling this war. Therefore, it's up to Russia, as the second biggest economic power in the world, to try and push both sides, Russia and Ukraine, towards some kind of peace.
Well, I think that way of reading the situation is definitely the way Putin would love it to be read. If the war could stop right now, if Putin stopped it. And so if China had any real interest in a real peace plan, which is one where Russia would stop its war in Ukraine, they would tell them now. Unfortunately, with the peace plan, as it's been described from China that was presented, China doesn't have the credibility with the international community to be that mediator that they think they could be. And also, if you look at what Russia is doing, it's China that's filling in those holes, filling in those gaps due to the sanctions and the Western U.S. businesses that are no longer doing business in Russia. Okay. So I don't see how China, being one of Russia's biggest supporters, could call itself a mediator between Russia and Ukraine when this could all end today if Putin and Russia decided it wanted to.
Well, the point is, if Putin does decide that he wants to end this war, then what is the off-ramp that the Western world and Ukraine is willing to give him? Because if the conflict were to be frozen today, Alexander Bratersky, it would necessarily mean that Russia keeps whatever portion of Ukraine it has as under its control right now, which is anywhere between a fourth to a fifth. But the point is, that would still mean that Putin had violated Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty, which is the very first point on the Chinese peace plan. The very first point would have been violated.
Yes, it's absolutely true. So the situation right now, it's very difficult for both sides. Russia is unwilling to compromise and to leave territories that already took over, and actually not even took over, but included them in the constitution, in constitutional provisions of the Russian Federation. So now for China, it's a very hard dance with Russia, unfortunately. So China, of course, has influence over Russia, and probably there's some things can be actually described behind the scenes, right? But right now, what we can see, if Russia will definitely move forward and offer something, that means the Chinese influence made something over Russia. Otherwise, okay, that will be an empty ability to do something to stop further escalation of the war. So right now, of course, President Putin is trying to say that things are okay, and you know, I'm supported by the Chinese person, a Chinese leader who, but already, as I have spoken to one of the former senior diplomats, he said in the Chinese gambit, Russia is a minor partner. So, which is very much, bad for Russia itself, because Russia could not anymore rely on its other hand, let's say European Union.
Okay.
There was China, with the European Union. There was something with the United States. Now it's only China. So it looks like Russia is pushed directly into China's sphere of influence.
So let me ask Alexei Goncharenko, who's a Ukrainian member of parliament, how seriously do you take the Chinese peace plan? It's a 12-point peace plan. If the conflict were to be frozen today, Mr. Goncharenko, that would mean that Ukraine would have to give up some of its territory, which it had prior to the 24th of February last year. So the question being, would Ukraine be amenable to such an idea? Because otherwise this fighting is just going to go on non-stop. It's never going to end.
Why? Never. Ukraine can liberate its territories, that's all. Well, that's what partly we did. Last year, we liberated big part of our territories, which were previously occupied by Russia. So that, for the moment, it looks like the most possible end of this war, just liberation of our territories. We're not going to give up any inch of our territory, and the world cannot allow this to happen, because that will mean that international order just doesn't work. That one country can attack another one, taking part of its territory, that sovereignty means nothing, that international law means nothing, and that will be a disaster for the whole world.
But Mr. Goncharenko, while you're saying all of this in theory is practical and it's applicable, but the fact is that today, in practical terms, your army is not in a position to push back the Russian army to the position that it had before the 24th of February last year. That's just the reality on the battlefield.
Who told this? Why are you saying that this is reality? Last year, Russia was telling that they will take Kiev in 2-3 days. In the reality, Ukraine last year liberated big part of our territory in the east, near Kharkiv. We liberated Kherson, which is the only regional capital which was occupied by Russia from February 24 of last year. So we showed that we can win against Russians.
Okay.
And now we are preparing counteroffensive. So we will see what will be the result.
Let me also go across to Professor Victor Gao for a Chinese perspective. No one thinks, least of all the United States or its European partners, that China has, forget about the heft, maybe it has the heft, but it certainly doesn't have the sincerity to agree to get both sides to agree on some kind of a cessation of hostilities. It may have some leverage over Putin, but certainly no leverage over Zelensky or Ukraine. And like you heard from the Ukrainian MP, Ukraine is not going to settle for anything less than taking back every inch of land that it had with it before this war began.
Thank you very much for having me. The Chinese peace proposal for the Ukrainian war or the Ukrainian crisis is the only peace proposal in front of mankind as a whole. Peace is not easy between Russia and Ukraine. Peace sometimes may be even more difficult than war. However, prolonging the war in Ukraine will prolong the suffering of the Ukrainian people, leading to more deaths among the Ukrainian civilians. And the fact that the United States and many NATO member states keep pouring more fire onto the fuel in Ukraine doesn't help ending the war as quickly as possible. China's peace proposal actually was tabled before the peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran as mediated by China. If Iran and Saudi Arabia can really reach a peace agreement despite of all the impossibilities, why shouldn't we give peace a chance between Russia and Ukraine?
Because Professor Gao, give me a moment, because while Iran and Saudi Arabia have 100 differences and they may be involved in proxy wars, if you will, in Yemen and Syria and so on, there is no active war going on between Iran and Saudi Arabia right now. There is an active war going on between Russia and Ukraine, number one. And number two, whether you like it or not, the Russia-Ukraine war is practically a war between NATO and Russia. It just so happens to be in Ukraine. The battlefield happens to be in Ukraine, but it's actually a war between NATO and Russia. That's not the case between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Exactly. Every situation has its own characteristics. You're absolutely right. The war in Ukraine is fast becoming a proxy war by the United States and NATO using Ukraine as a proxy against Russia. Therefore, this proxy war is very dangerous because it may spill out of control into other countries, including NATO member states. It may escalate from conventional war into unconventional war. It may not only be a disaster to Ukrainian people, it may become a huge disaster to mankind as a whole. This is the right time to call for a ceasefire, put a stop to the war as quickly as possible.
No, I think one of the problems
doesn't mean
that
the territorial disputes between Russia and Ukraine will be solved overnight.
I get that.
Nothing that easy.
I get that.
Each party will present its claims,
I
which will
get
be
that.
conflicting, which will be overlapping. But eventually, once you strive for peace,
what China is essentially playing
discussed.
at, Calvin Dark, is not so much a settlement of this crisis or a settlement of this war. What they are playing at, Calvin Dark, is simply if they can get both sides to stop the hostilities. Even if tomorrow Putin were to say that I'm not going to ask my troops to attack for the next 15 days, that in itself would be seen as a bit of a coup. That's what China is playing at.
Well, this is actually a lot more simple than folks are making it. The reason this conflict is being prolonged is because of Putin. If Putin stopped today and withdrew from, if Putin followed, I think it was the first point of the peace plan proposed by China, by respecting the territorial integrity of sovereign nations, this would be over tomorrow. If Putin withdrew his troops and stopped attacking Ukraine, I guarantee you the United States would stop supplying arms to Ukraine.
But
this is not about
Calvin. The point is, if he were to withdraw today, why would he have attacked Ukraine in the first place? What is he going back with if he were to withdraw today?
Well, that's why I think it was a mistake. And that's why I think that China is, I don't know if this is one of their goals, but I know it's Putin's goal. He needs to save face. The international community, NATO, the United States, should not turn this into how can we help Putin save face. If the Chinese really are behind the peace plan that they proposed, there's one party that could stop it all today. Okay. And that's Putin and Russia. And I don't think the international community should be in the business of trying to help Putin save face from an illegal invasion of a sovereign country.
Okay, so let me give the final word to Alexei Goncharenko, the Ukrainian member of parliament. Most wars in history have ended in some kind of a negotiated settlement, whether it's from the world wars to the Vietnam War. Ultimately, there has to be some amount of give and take. Right now, what's happening is that Mr. Zelensky, your president, is not willing to give an inch. And unless that happens, you're not going to see a cessation of hostilities. So essentially, what you're saying to your people and to the world is this fighting is going to go on till at least next winter before there is some kind of move towards peace.
No, what we are saying we want to restore international order. That's all what we are saying. And yes, you mentioned world wars. But how they finished? With the defeat of aggressor. Germany attacked in the First World War, it was defeated and it was peace. Germany attacked in the Second World War, it was defeated and it was the peace. Russia attacked now, it should be defeated and there will be a peace. Or Russia can withdraw, like our American colleagues said. They can do it today and the war will be finished. That's all.
Okay. Alexander Bratersky, what is then stopping Vladimir Putin? Because our American friends have been saying this as well, that this war can end tomorrow if Vladimir Putin says, okay, I'm done. I wanted to teach Ukraine a lesson. I've done that. Now I'm going back.
Yeah, the situation is very complicated. I do agree with all the participants. I mean, President Putin would definitely not withdraw from Ukraine because only if there is something changes on the ground. If, let's say, if there's a loss, he will see that. And then he's going to do that because he actually did that himself. So, and he incorporated those territories into the Russian Federation. Some of the potent critics are saying, and I might agree with them, the war continues, the Putin still stays, then the Putin still stays because the war machine is actually making him the president right now. So
we'll
I
see
think
how
that's
this
the
plays
most,
out. My
difficult
own
thing that,
gut is that both sides, both the Russian side and the Ukrainian side, are preparing for further offensive. It's going to get far more bloodier, this conflict, before we move to some kind of a negotiated settlement, or at least a cessation of hostilities before we can move to a settlement. Yes, China is trying, but I don't think the Ukrainians or their benefactors in the West trust China to be an honest arbiter. And even in the case of Putin, what is the off-ramp? What is the solution that's being offered by China so that he can, quote unquote, as they famously say in China, save face? I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, the man who angered the entire country with his bid to try and desecrate the tricolour in London has been arrested. But is the Khalistan rot too deep? How does India deal with this? Right on the other side for this quick break. Ma'am, 10 seconds. You gave away in that answer that Modi government may be able to control a lot of things domestically, but they can't control it internationally. You know, by de facto, you are saying that, you know, we need the international press, the Western press, the New York Times and Washington Post and other, you know, global markets to actually undermine him, because we can't seem to be able to do that electorally here in India.
Let me
willy-nilly, that's what you are saying.
I'll come to your question, but let me complete my thought first. In 2010, a whole winter session was washed out, Zaka, because the BJP was demanding resignation of a minister and constitution of a JPC. And the same BJP, sitting as the ruling party today, can, be so non-committal, can be so brazen in its conduct that it can absolutely forego democracy for its and fancies. And what you have just asked me, let me say that we are living in a world when FDI drives the economy, for a major part of it. And so you cannot look away from the global picture at your own discretion, that for this we'll look at the global picture, but for that we'll not. You know, when it comes to media, when it comes to the market is reflecting Mr. Adani's actions very categorically, very clearly. And all we are asking is, what are you trying to hide?
So what exactly is the price of this parliament deadlock? Let's break it down in terms of numbers. So far, there have been 17 sittings in the second leg of the budget session of parliament, and the money that's been lost because of these repeated disruptions in both houses is over 80 crore rupees. That's just in the last 2 weeks. Parliament should have worked for 90 hours. Instead, more than half of it, 54 hours, have been lost just in the din. Only 3 bills have been introduced in this session so far, and that includes the budget for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. That is a lone bill that has been passed in this entire session. But at this point of time, there are close to 36 bills that are still pending to be introduced in the House. So, what exactly is going on? Because it seems like neither the ruling party MPs nor the opposition want Parliament to function, thereby making a fool of the people of this country, the taxpayers who fund this charade. Is it time to end the charade once and for all? Aparajita Sarangi is BJP Member of Parliament, who will be joined by Dr. Shantanu Sen of the Trinamool Congress. Mahima Singh, advocate, is a spokesperson of the Congress Party. Amar Patnaik, MP of the BJD, and Ratan Sharda, RSS researcher and author, is also on the broadcast. Let me start with Aparajita Sarangi. It is said that the onus of running the House, in fact both houses, is on the government, is on the ruling party, it's on the treasury benches. For the last 2 weeks, Aparajita Sarangi, the BJP, and you're a member of Parliament of the lower house, you have been asking for Mr. Rahul Gandhi to apologize for whatever he said in London. Without going into the merits of what he said or did not say, is that an issue that should be holding up Parliament, wasting taxpayer money for 2 weeks now, ma'am?
A very good evening. At the outset, let me tell you that it's the combined responsibility of the ruling dispensation and the opposition to run the Parliament. And very unfortunate that we have not been able to do so. And I would definitely like to mention here that today in the Lok Sabha, the demand for grants for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir could be passed amid all noise and din. Now, we are all aware of the fact that today, Honorable Speaker had convened the meeting of all the political parties, and he in fact held discussions with all of them and requested them to calm down. And of course, the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha also did the same. He had convened a meeting. Now, as far as the situation in the parliament is concerned, I very emphatically would like to say here that there is a very nervous opposition which is feeling overwhelmed by a very strong ruling dispensation. This is the scenario. And as far as Bharatiya Janata Party and the government of Prime Minister Modi is concerned, we are extremely clear about what we are saying and doing. We are against whatever Rahul Gandhi did and said in London and in Cambridge University. Whatever his statements, these statements were against the
Welcome back. Just days after the brazen bid to bring down the tricolour that was hoisted above the Indian High Commission in London, it left the entire nation outraged. The mastermind of the attack has been nabbed. Wanted Khalistani Avtar Singh Khanda was held and he was charged for organising and leading the attack on the Indian High Commission. This happened Sunday in London. The person who you can see climbing up the balcony and trying to desecrate the Indian flag is believed to be Avtar Singh Khanda. He has links to Pakistan's ISI and is also set to be behind the meteoric rise of Amritpal Singh. So who is this Avtar Singh Khanda, the man behind the London embassy attack? He is a UK-based ISI-linked Khalistani operative who the Indian intelligence agencies in the past have accused of providing IED training inside gurdwaras in the UK. His father, Kulwant Singh Kukhrana, was a member of the Khalistan Liberation Force. Khanda is a trusted lieutenant of Paramjit Singh Pamma, the leader of the band Bhabbar Khalsa International. Amritpal Singh is also believed to be a close associate of Avtar Singh Khanda. According to reports, Khanda trained Amritpal Singh for Mission Khalistan with the aim of destabilizing Punjab. Meanwhile, after the Indian High Commission was vandalized by a dozen or so pro-Khalistani supporters, the High Commissioner of India to the UK, Vikram Doraiswamy, held a meeting with members of the Indian community who had concerns regarding the incident. One Khalistani scaled the building's wall, or at least tried to lower the tricolour, but an Indian High Commission official stepped out into the balcony and snatched the flag away from him. The protester then started waving a Khalistani flag, but the official there, who was a security guard, we're given to understand, of the High Commission premises, he grabbed it and he threw it onto the ground. The miscreants, who are believed to be local students, even broke one of the glass doors of the High Commission building. Today, the Indian diaspora came out in huge numbers outside the Indian High Commission to show their support for India and the idea of India and their rejection of Khalistan.
People with flags dancing to the Bhangra, absolutely asserting their spirit, asserting their faith, determined to layer over any memories of assault and of violence and of vandalism with joy and an affirmation in India. A lot of people have turned up here spontaneously. This is the middle of a working day. It doesn't look like that. This looks like a carnival and not time for work in an office somewhere. But people have been brought here by their enthusiasm. And now you see the police joining in. This is a value that's not just about everybody who believes in democracy and in a peaceful society would share, and the police very much now a part of the Bhangra, part of the celebrations.
Now, whether it was the attack in the Indian High Commission in London or the consulate building that happened in San Francisco, India's response has been firm and resolute. The senior-most UK diplomat in Delhi was summoned over the desecration of the tricolour at the High Commission building in London. In the case of the San Francisco attack, India lodged a strong protest with the US chargé d'affaires in the Delhi embassy. The UK diplomat was asked to explain why there was a complete absence of British security, London Metropolitan Police, outside the Indian High Commission building. The US diplomat was reminded about America's obligations to protect diplomatic representation, including mission buildings. India reminded the UK of its obligations under the Vienna Convention, while the US was told to take measures to prevent a recurrence of such incidents. The Biden administration has also reacted to the attack on the Indian consulate in San Francisco, calling it absolutely unacceptable.
We certainly condemn that that vandalism. It's just absolutely unacceptable. The State Department's diplomatic security service is working with local authorities. I can't speak for the San Francisco police, but I can say that the diplomatic security service is working with local authorities to properly investigate, and obviously the State Department is going to be working from an infrastructure perspective to repair the damage, but it's unacceptable.
After pro-Khalistan mobs targeted the Indian embassies in London as well as in San Francisco, the fire is now raging in Canada as well. A mob of about 300 Khalistan supporters disrupted a diaspora event in the Canadian city of Surrey, and they allegedly attacked members of the Indian community there. The reception was organized for the Indian High Commissioner in Ottawa, but they were forced to cancel the event when the mob descended on the venue, wielding swords and hurling anti-India slogans. At least 3 members of the Indian community were injured in the protest, which went on for nearly 5 hours. Meanwhile, an Indian origin journalist from a radio station who was going to cover the diaspora event in Surrey was allegedly heckled by a mob of Khalistan supporters. The journalist, whose name is Sameer Kaushal, claims that the mob surrounded him and started abusing him. Finally, the police asked him to move away from the location for his own safety.
That time, the situation was very tense, and it was very shocking for me. It was very terrorizing experience as well. When 100, 125, 150 people, they were around you and they were pushing you, they were throwing, abusive words in Punjabi language in front of you, and the police, which we supposed to, they are here to save us from these kind of elements, and when they are, not providing you adequate security, how would somebody feel? I mean, that was the case, and I was under the trauma as well at that time.
Party Amar Patnaik, MP of the BJD, and Ratan Sharda, RSS researcher and author, is also on the broadcast. Let me start with Aparajita Sarangi. It is said that the onus of running the House, in fact both houses, is on the government, is on the ruling party, it's on the Treasury benches. For the last 2 weeks, Aparajita Sarangi, the BJP, and you're a member of Parliament of the lower house, you have been asking for Mr. Rahul Gandhi to apologize for whatever he said in London. Without going into the merits of what he said or did not say, is that an issue that should be holding up Parliament, wasting taxpayer money for 2 weeks now, ma'am?
A very good evening. At the outset, let me tell you that it's the combined responsibility of the ruling dispensation and the opposition to run the Parliament. And very unfortunate that we have not been able to do so. And I would definitely like to mention here that today in the Lok Sabha, the demand for grants for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir could be passed amid all noise and din. Now, we are all aware of the fact that today, Honorable Speaker had convened the meeting of all the political parties, and he in fact held discussions with all of them and requested them to calm down. And of course, the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha also did the same. He had convened a meeting. Now, as far as the situation in the Parliament is concerned, I very emphatically would like to say here that there is a very nervous opposition which is feeling overwhelmed by a very strong ruling dispensation. This is the scenario. And as far as Bharatiya Janata Party and the government of Prime Minister Modi is concerned, we are extremely clear about what we are saying and doing. We are against whatever Rahul Gandhi did and said in London and in Cambridge University. Whatever his statements, these statements were against the nation, and he has brought down the status of the country, has demeaned the status of the country, and he has humiliated all of us. So for that matter, we are insistent on his apology. Now, let me make it very clear. In fact, you would be kind of telling me after I speak that he wanted to speak and you did not allow him to speak. Now here, very candidly, I would like to submit that he wanted to offer an explanation, but we want him to offer an apology. We have heard him on the foreign soil as to what he said. And I think we need not kind of, get any kind of explanation for him. He has requested, or rather he mentioned Europe and America, and he said, why are they silent?
Hello, namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's day 2 of Xi Jinping's peace mission in Russia. The Chinese president is trying to play mediator. He wants to end the war in Ukraine, but will he find any takers? There have been developments in Crimea, a major explosion. The Ukrainians have not taken responsibility, but we're waiting to see how this changes the story. The Russian president has not revealed his cards yet. Tomorrow is Xi Jinping's last day in Moscow. Meanwhile, the Americans have come out with a human rights report. It's the same old spiel. They are lecturing the whole world about what to do with human rights. It talks about every country but the United States of America. And we wonder why other countries do not publish such reports featuring the US. But we've done it for them tonight. We bring you a report on human rights in the US. Also, the banking crisis. A new study shows what we've seen so far is just the tip of the iceberg, could just be the tip of the iceberg. It says more than 180 banks in America could be in trouble. And a special story from Afghanistan. The Taliban are quiet quitting. We'll tell you why. The headlines first. The Netanyahu government climbs down over judicial reforms and unprecedented protests. The Israeli Prime Minister announces a softening of stand. But the opposition has rejected his pitch. It says it will challenge the proposal in Israel's Supreme Court. After India, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida arrives in Kiev. He will hold talks with Ukrainian President Zelensky. The Japanese Prime Minister is the last G7 leader to visit the war-torn country. The American state of Idaho could soon allow prisoner executions by a firing squad. Lawmakers approve a bill that would permit it if no lethal injection is available. This would be the 5th US state to approve death by a firing squad. Some relief for Imran Khan. The former Prime Minister of Pakistan gets protective bail from the Lahore High Court in 2 cases of terrorism, but he faces many others. And a big blow to one of China's biggest online retailers. Google suspends the popular shopping app Pinduoduo after detecting malware in its software. It's day 2 of Xi Jinping's visit to Moscow. He met Putin informally yesterday, and today the two leaders met again. But the meeting was overshadowed by this. What you saw was an explosion in Crimea. Russian cruise missiles were destroyed and Russia's Black Sea Fleet has been hit. That's because the cruise missiles were designed to be launched from those ships. Russia says it was a drone attack. Ukraine's defense ministry has confirmed the explosion, but it has not taken responsibility for the attack. If a Ukrainian hand is proven, it will be an escalation, a daring attack deep inside what is now Russian territory. And remember the timing of the strike. The Chinese president is in Russia. He has come with a peace plan. Xi Jinping presented the plan to Putin yesterday, and Putin said, "We are ready to talk."
We have carefully studied your proposals on setting the acute crisis in Ukraine. You're also well aware that we are always open for negotiation process. We will discuss all these issues, including your initiatives.
We are always open for negotiation, says the Russian president. But that was yesterday. Will his tone change today after the Crimea explosion? Putin met Xi Jinping for formal talks, and as always, he spoke in riddles.
It's obvious that President Putin and President Xi discussed Beijing's 12-point peace plan for Ukraine because they said they would discuss it. If you remember, Putin said so last night. I will not be giving any assessments. Let us wait for the statements from the media.
Which brings us to Xi Jinping. What is his peace plan? And what does China want? For starters, Beijing is pushing for a ceasefire, followed by peace talks between both sides. Of course, that's something that China hopes to oversee. They've not said it on record so far, but if you go through the statements in the Chinese press, you get the picture. China has been talking about an end to hostilities and a ceasefire in Ukraine. But it's easier said than done. There are clear stumbling blocks for China here. First of all, Ukraine may not agree because a ceasefire would mean loss of territory for them. It would be advantage Russia. And the West most likely will not be on board. The US is already talking about it. It says a ceasefire will go in Putin's favor and leave Russian forces inside Ukraine.
But we are concerned that instead, China will reiterate calls for a ceasefire that leaves Russian forces inside Ukraine's sovereign territory. Now, any ceasefire that does not address the removal of Russian forces from Ukraine would effectively ratify Russia's illegal conquests.
The US thinks a ceasefire will help Putin buy time, that it will help Russian forces regroup and possibly launch a bigger offensive later. But all this is on expected lines. What's interesting, though, is the Ukrainian response. Zelensky has been keen to talk to the Chinese president. The two leaders have not spoken since the war began, not even once. And reports say Xi Jinping may call up Zelensky soon. It could be a virtual meeting. The dates have not been announced formally, but there's a lot of buzz. The call may happen after Xi leaves Moscow. The question is, why is Zelensky keen to engage with Xi Jinping? And the answer is, why not? He has some compelling reasons, like Chinese money. It's a trap in the long run, but for a country battered by war, Chinese investment can help in rebuilding. Also, pushing China away comes with its own risks. Beijing could double down on its support to Russia. It could share more military aid, even lethal arms. So Zelensky might want to get a foot in that door, at least make himself heard. And it's not like he's very firm on principles. He's happy to do business